YouTube. What's going on to the good people at YouTube? This is, of course, your guy, Matt Brooks, aka Matt Brooks NBA. Do not forget the NBA. I'll keep this brief. YouTube is something I've wanted to do for a while. It's a style of content that really appeals to me, and I try to add something to my repertoire every single offseason. But enough of the cute, generic buzzwords. Let's get into why we are all here today, which is the 2020 offseason, specifically for the Brooklyn Nets. Because yes, as a Nets reporter, I have spent more hours than I would like to share looking at this specific, rather weak crop of free agents and trying to figure out who fits best in those brand new tie-dye Brooklyn Nets throwback jerseys. Alright, so whenever it comes to free agency, the first word that comes up is need. What does need mean? Need means, especially for a team like the Brooklyn Nets that is maybe 1 to 2 pieces away from really putting together a championship roster, what brings your team to that next level? For the Brooklyn Nets, their needs are light and may not even be necessary, but there are 3 spots I would really look at for them. The first is a wing. Just about every single team in the league needs wings, and honestly, there's going to be a lot of competition for the, 6 to 7 guys that are available in this class. However, if they can land one of these guys, and we will get into some of the names in just a bit, I think that could really take them over the top. But look, the reason I bring up a need for a wing is that right now, the guy who is likely picking up those LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard assignments without much support, unless you count Taurean Prince that, which I personally don't. That guy is Kevin Durant, your best player as a Brooklyn Net, and a guy that's coming off a pretty severe injury. So, to better insulate him and give him an easier way to work his way back into shape, I would look pretty strongly at acquiring somebody that shoots threes and plays really hard-nosed defense. You could also take that same application of hard-nosed defense and the ability to shoot, but actually size up a position, which is why I'm looking at a stretch big as another target for the Nets. Somebody that can shift between the 4 and the 5, shoot some threes, and provide a little bit of post defense and rim protection against some of the giants in this league, including Giannis Antetokounmpo, I can't believe I just got that right, Anthony Davis, both in the post and when he stretches, Nikola Jokic, same goes for him, and Joel Embiid. And then on a lesser note, though I don't find this to be of the utmost necessity, is a point of attack defender. So how this video is going to work is we're going to go through every single position. I'm going to break down a couple of players, and then at the very end, I'm going to go over my personal list of most sought after free agents for the Nets if I'm Sean Marks. Shoot, I forgot one last disclaimer. I have to mention what the Nets are working with monetarily. Obviously, they have their space for veteran minimum contracts like many title contenders do, but the Nets also have their own mid-level exception. Now, unlike the Bucks or the Lakers, because the Nets are a tax-paying team, their mid-level exception isn't the full $9.5 to $10 million, which is right now the projection. No, the Nets mid-level exception is called the mini MLE, or mid-level exception, and that's projected to be around anywhere in the ballpark of $5.5 to $6 million. All right, longest intro ever is over. Let's get into the point guards. Let me just say this. I don't find point guard to be a position of need for the Nets. But if they wanted to grab a defensive third guard, I think there's definitely room for that. Right now, they have a whole bunch of guys vying for that third guard spot, or really third point guard spot, in terms of Tyler Johnson, Chris Chiozza, and Jeremiah Martin, who is under contract next year. But say they wanted to spruce that spot up a little bit. A guy like Chris Dunn could come in and provide a lot of defensive pressure. Outfit change, there's going to be a couple of these, as this is a multi-day project. Anyways, Chris Dunn established himself as one of the peskiest defenders in the entire league, nearly landing on the all-defensive team due to his commitment to the defensive end of the floor. Looked at as mostly a disappointment since coming out of Providence, he's completely rebranded himself similar to a Tony Allen. Per NBA stats, Dunn established himself as one of the most disruptive defenders in the league, picking up 5.4 deflections per 36 minutes to even out for sample size. As you can see in these clips, he can pick up a variety of offensive players, including DeMar DeRozan in the post and Derrick Rose in transition. By no means an easy feat. To be clear, he's still a pretty horrendous offensive player, shooting 25.9% from 3, which means he won't have a huge role for a team like the Nets, but there's definitely room for him to be a very useful utility player. If you're looking for a lesser version of what Dunn can provide, look no further than this Rookie of the Year that played for the Philadelphia 76ers. Nope, I'm not talking Ben Simmons, I'm talking Michael Carter-Williams. Much like fellow lottery pick Chris Dunn, Carter-Williams, picked 11th all the way back in 2013, has rebranded himself and is now a pretty nice defensive player. According to 538's Raptor rating, Carter-Williams graded out as a +3 on the defensive end. At 6'5", 2 inches taller than Chris Dunn, Carter-Williams is a pretty nifty pick and roll defender. And with that stature, it should come as no surprise that he blanketed pick and roll ball handlers with 70th percentile efficiency per synergy. One quick bonus guy who I really doubt would be available because he is a restricted free agent and he performed wonderfully in the bubble, Javon Carter shoots above 40% from 3, plays tenacious defense. I mean, what more do you really need? But again, I don't think the Suns let him walk. All right, let's talk some shooting guards. All 2 of them. I have a couple of golden rules in life, and one of them is always look for hidden assets on certain teams. Like the Knicks. I would love to know what Damian Dotson did wrong in this life or a previous life to play just 17 minutes per game on a team that won 31% of their games. Seriously, this might have been the Knicks' best perimeter defender outside of Frank Ntilikina, another player who struggled with playing time. And he shot the 3 ball at about a league average rate, 36%, for 2 of his 3 seasons. He just feels like a great 3-and-D role player waiting to happen. Though I was surprised to learn that he's got a little bit of playmaking chops hidden under the wraps. That's right, he was a 71st percentile pick and roll ball handler this year per synergy, and the year before he was in the 96th percentile in this specific category. I'm telling you folks, there's something here. So say hello to Courtney Lee. Yes, former Net Courtney Lee is on my list. Yes, he's still in the league, and yes, he shot 44% from 3 on 47 attempts. So take that with a grain of salt. Depending upon how Lee looks coming off calf surgery, there's a chance he's this year's Avery Bradley. As in, he's a guy who, because he's played on so many losing teams, he's actually seen his value depreciate by circumstance. I mean, seriously, I've got his basketball reference pulled up on my second screen, and I've got to tell you, the 2016 Grizzlies, the Charlotte Hornets, 2.5 years of the New York Knicks, and then last year's Dallas Mavericks right after they made the Kristaps Porzingis trade, that's not exactly a luxurious line of stocks. So yeah, sue me for thinking there's still something here with Courtney Lee. All right, that was quick. Time for some small forwards. Let us begin with Kent Bazemore, who by all accounts is a beloved teammate. He's got a really cool story coming from Old Dominion, and he's had a really interesting career, growing from a cheerleader of sorts on the early Warriors bench all the way to earning himself a contract worth $17.5 million per year on average. He's coming off that contract after being salary dumped to Sacramento and actually being really successful. A quick Google search will tell you everything you need to know about the Bazemore experience in Sacramento. He provided a ton of necessary energy for them and shot north of 38% from 3, which really isn't too outlandish. He's a good, maybe not great 3-point shooter. Speaking of vets that know how to play their role, say hello to Wesley Matthews. One of the big reasons that Chris Middleton broke out the way he did was because of Wes Matthews. See, before the Bucks landed Matthews, it was Middleton who was taking on those difficult primary assignments. Think like the Kawhi Leonards of the world. Now, in landing Matthews, that meant that Middleton could focus a little bit more on his scoring, increasing his on-ball numbers tremendously this year. If you can't tell, I want guys who play defense and shoot threes. Wes Matthews is a guy who does that. The tricky part is that Matthews has a player option worth about $2.6 million, and I just don't know if he's going to get more on the open market. Maybe he does, but this really is a weird offseason in that very little teams have cap space. So if he picks up that option, I wouldn't be all that surprised. The Bucks will be in contention next year and really could win a finals if they make the right moves. But if he says, hey, I want to live in a cooler place like, I don't know, Brooklyn, So I completely forgot about Justin Holiday, who shot 40% from 3 this year. We'll see if that's replicable. He also defended spot-up shooters in the 84th percentile. You have to remember with percentiles, 100 is the best possible, 0 is the worst, so that's really impressive. Overall, he's just a really good defender. The key with Holiday is that he's only made $16 million over his 7-year career, so there's a good chance he values financial security over the chance to win a championship. But hey, on the off chance that isn't the case, then yeah, I could see Brooklyn Brooklyn going for him? Let's breeze through these next couple of options. I want to get to some more fun ones. Wes Iwundu is a guy that always sticks out to me whenever the Nets play the Magic. He's your quintessential glue guy. He dives on the floor for loose balls, he's a total grinder, and he just seems to make the right play. He shot only 207 total threes in his career, though I will admit he shot 36.7% in 2018-2019, and then 34.1% last year. And then James Ennis, the third, he's fine. If you run out of options, I mean, he's decent at everything. All right, power forwards. This is where things start to get fun. So Jay Crowder. I have no idea what Jay Crowder is going to earn on the open market. Again, it's kind of a weird year, but one of the teams with cap space happens to be the Miami Heat. Yes, they want to keep their books clean for 2021, so you may be looking at a pretty exorbitant one-year deal with Miami. But if that doesn't come to fruition, I mean, Jay Crowder is literally exactly what the Nets need. Where does one even begin with the legend of Jay Crowder? He came to the Heat via a trade deadline deal with the Memphis Grizzlies, completely transformed them by rendering Kelly Olynyk and Myers Leonard somewhat useless, allowing them to downsize and play Bam at center. Then, in round 2, he effectively ended the Milwaukee Bucks season by shooting 43% from 3, and then, in the finals, he outplayed Dwight Howard at his own game, pushing the tremendous offensive rebounder off his spots and beating him in box outs, forcing the Lakers to play, Anthony Davis at center, which is actually really good for them as well. But regardless, Jay Crowder was really, really important for the Heat at multiple points in the season, and he could greatly open up things for the Nets and take some pressure off Kevin Durant. Paul Millsap's another guy who I could see shining considerably in Brooklyn in a reduced role. After that first round and a half of the bubble playoffs, I truthfully thought he was shot, but he really showed me something in Game 5 of that Clippers game and beyond. He's an 87th percentile spot-up shooter, making him a pretty stretchy option. And he's still got really quick hands on defense, which, I mean, will always lead well to good things on D. He didn't have a great year in the post, but in 2018-2019, he was prolific from the low block, so I believe when push comes to shove, he can do stuff down there. Look, we know what Paul Millsap is, and that's just a really reliable option. I think he'd be fantastic off the bench. I didn't understand why the Portland Trailblazers traded away Mo Harkless, and I definitely didn't understand when the LA Clippers traded him to New York for Marcus Morris in a first-round pick. By the way, Marcus Morris will be nowhere near this list, as I think Harkless is pretty good. Just take a look at his 2018-2019 matchup stats courtesy of NBA.com. In the postseason, he guarded the likes of Jamal Murray, Paul George, Draymond Green, Russell Westbrook, Nikola Jokic, Steph Curry, Jeremy Grant, and Paul Millsap. Basically, whatever his Blazers needed from him on the defensive end of the floor, he took that assignment. The Jeff Green experience is a terrifying one, though I do feel like we learned some things about him in Houston. He graded out positively as a roll man, putting up 70th percentile efficiency in the playoffs. They also used him as a ball handler in an inverted pick and roll with James Harden, to give Harden a little bit of room when he popped a 3. Defensively, he's a negative according to Raptor rating, and at this point, he's passable at best. And yes, he's still the woefully inconsistent Jeff Green. And then let's conclude with a former Net, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. At many points in this Nets season, it felt like they were short an enforcer. Well, this is where Rondae comes into play. Toronto unlocked him as a rolling 5 who defended hard and especially pressured the offensive glass and made the best of his kinetic self. It's kind of shocking because a year ago I wouldn't have said this, but I'm down for a reunion with Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. Time for the centers. Here's the thing about bringing in a center. It would probably mean the end of Jared Allen's tenure, so I'm going to be really picky about this, because Jared Allen is a totally solid option. Tristan Thompson is a guy that makes a little bit of sense. Unlike Jared Allen, he can actually stretch the floor beyond 3 feet. He wasn't a great shooter this year, but he was at least taking them. We know what he is as an offensive rebounder, and he's pretty switchable defensively. Just look at those 2016 finals. There will be a lot of teams chasing him. I assume it'll be teams like the Clippers or the Celtics, or really anybody that's trying to size up for fear of the Anthony Davis LeBron Lakers, which is, by the way, a fear I very much have for the Brooklyn Nets. But if they can get Tristan Thompson for maybe that mini MLE, I mean, do it. Aaron Baines is a much stretchier option. He's a big reason the Suns got off to the hot start that they did to kick off the 2019-2020 season, shooting 35% from 3 on 4 attempts per game, and he's just a big body inside, a nice post-up defender. Serge Ibaka has been the apple of Nets fans' eyes, and for good reason. He's a 36% three-point shooter for his entire career. That includes the early portions of his career when he was a complete non-shooter. He's obviously not a defensive player of the year anymore, but he's still a really nice shot blocker, and he rebounds the ball really well. I will say I have some light concerns about his ability to defend the perimeter. The Celtics really hunted him in switches, and it was just something I took down in my notes. But as a talent grab alone, I mean, this guy is probably one of the best players in this entire class. And if you're Sean Marks and you get this guy for the MLE, that's a major dub. I'm also weirdly optimistic you could play him at the 4 if you really need to against a giant team like, say, I don't know, the Lakers, because of his shooting ability, and I just like that flexibility. Now, Serge Ibaka is a maybe to play both the 4 and the 5. JaMychal Green is a definitely in this regard. According to Basketball Reference's sometimes reliable position estimate, Green played 87% of his minutes at the 4 in this year's playoffs for the Clippers, even while the league was trending smaller and smaller. He's a bit more multi-positional than, say, Serge Ibaka, and he's really tough as well. On offense, he stretches more than just capably. He's a 37% career three-point shooter. Green's just such an instinctual player. He knows where to be on defense. He's selfless. He's just everything you could want in an off-the-bench option. Though with a $5 million player option, there's a good chance he picks that up or just renegotiates a very similar contract over more years with the LA Clippers. Because should Montrezl Harrell walk, Green is an excellent backup center option for the LA Clippers. They almost cannot lose him. The Nets are on the doorsteps of a championship berth. Per Pete Watt of oddschecker.com, you can check out their website by clicking on the link in the description. Almost 22% of all 2021 NBA championship bets have gone the Nets' way. The Nets are a championship favorite for a reason. They feature a guy who is arguably the second best player in the league and a second star who's arguably a top 15 player in the NBA. But still, there's nothing wrong with trying to fill a few of the small gaps, which brings us to my top 5. At number 5, I have Mo Harkless, who is such a great multi-positional defender. He fills a huge position of need for the Nets, that power forward spot. At number 4, I have JaMychal Green, who, it goes without saying, he defends hard, he shoots threes, he could play both the 4 and the 5. I just think there's so many things that he could do for the Nets that would make a huge difference deep in the playoffs. Number 3, Serge Ibaka. As mentioned, this is a talent grab, and I mean, look, this might be the most talented player in this free agency class that's actually eligible for the MLE. Number 2, Paul Millsap. Just an old reliable veteran, knows exactly what he needs to do, plays within himself, he's got tons of experience. And then number 1, I have Jay Crowder. Yes, he can be a little streaky from the 3, but he's a good enough shooter to keep defenses honest. He's a super tough defender who can mold into really any defensive system you need him to. He succeeded in both Miami and Memphis. I think people forget about how great he was for them. And in a limited role, coming off the bench right behind Kevin Durant, he might be exactly what those Brooklyn Nets need to bring home a championship to Brooklyn. And there you have it. This concludes my Nets free agency mega preview. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at MattBrooksNBA and subscribe to this channel. It's new and that stuff helps greatly, as does throwing this video a like. If you enjoyed it, be sure to share on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, really wherever you want. As we get closer and closer to free agency and we have news breaking left and right, I think I'll be using this channel a lot. For those of you that read me, the film stuff I've been doing in writing, you can expect a stab at some of that on this channel. Yes, I'm going to be doing some film breakdowns here. So again, subscribe for all that goodness in the future. And again, thank you guys so much. Peace!